You're listening to an exclusive production from Valio, The Revenge Spiral, When Retaliation Feeds the Soul. Chapter 1. The Flame of Retaliation, Awareness Before Action. There is a moment, silent, electric, when the air around you thickens with something ancient, the sting of betrayal, the taste of injustice. It settles deep like smoke in your lungs. You feel it before you name it. The slow, hot rise of fury that demands to be seen, to be answered, to be justified. Retaliation begins here, not with the act itself, but with the ignition, the spark that leaps from the wound to the will. You might tell yourself it's about fairness, about setting things right, and sometimes it is, but underneath there's something more primal at work. The fire that awakens when you are wronged is the same fire that built empires and burned them down. It is creation and destruction, intertwined. When someone crosses you, when they take without remorse, when they humiliate or betray, something inside you hardens, the body tightens, the heart pounds, thoughts sharpen to a single point. You begin to rehearse what you'll say, what you'll do, how you'll make them understand. This is the mind's way of reclaiming control. You are trying to restore balance, to remind the universe that your pain has a price. But before you act, before the flame turns into an inferno, you must pause long enough to see it for what it truly is. Anger is not the enemy. It is a messenger. It carries information, a signal that a boundary has been violated, that something sacred was taken, that your dignity was disregarded. The first act of awareness is to listen, to feel without being consumed. You do not need to suppress it. Suppression makes the fire turn inward, scorching your peace. But neither must you indulge it recklessly, for that turns the fire outward, devouring whatever stands near. There is a middle path between denial and destruction, and it begins with awareness. Ask yourself, what exactly am I avenging? When you strip away the surface offense, the insult, the betrayal, the manipulation, what is the wound beneath? Is it about respect, trust, power, recognition? The truest answer is rarely the loudest one. Beneath rage often lies grief. Beneath the desire to destroy lies the longing to be seen. Most people move too fast past this recognition. They rush into reaction because sitting with the pain feels unbearable. But this is where strength is born, in your ability to hold the intensity without flinching, to breathe in the heat and study its pattern, to look directly into what burned you and understand how it happened. Revenge feels intoxicating because it offers an illusion of closure. The fantasy whispers that if you make them hurt the way you did, the pain will disappear. But what actually happens is a mirroring, a reflection. You recreate the same vibration in yourself that you're trying to escape. You drink poison and call it justice. Still, the impulse to strike back is not inherently wrong. There are times when retaliation is the body's way of saying, I refuse to remain powerless. To harness that truth, you must know your own capacity. Anger is raw fuel. What you build or burn with it depends on how clearly you can direct it. To master the flame, begin with observation. When you feel that surge, tight chest, shallow breath, clenched jaw, pause. Do not speak. Do not act. Instead, imagine stepping outside of yourself for a moment, watching as the energy builds. Label it, describe it. I am angry. I feel heat rising. I want to strike back. Naming what you feel doesn't weaken it, it transforms it into something you can work with. Unnamed, it owns you. Named, it obeys you. Next, track its intensity. On a scale within your mind, sense where it sits. Is it a small flicker, or is it roaring at full force? This awareness teaches you how to modulate it, to stoke or cool it as needed. Ask what the anger wants. Often it seeks validation or justice, but sometimes it simply wants acknowledgement. To say aloud, even to yourself, that was not okay, can be the first act of reclamation. It does not require an audience or a target. It is between you and your truth. When awareness deepens, something interesting happens. You start to separate your energy from the one who hurt you. Instead of orbiting around their actions, you begin to return to your own center. This is the first flicker of freedom. Retaliation feels powerful, but clarity is far more potent. It restores choice. Think of fire again. Uncontained, it ravages forests, but guided, it forges metal, fuels engines, brings warmth. The same energy that can destroy can also create. The difference lies in focus. To harness the flame of retaliation, you must cultivate discipline, not the cold repression of emotion, but the refined strength of someone who chooses when and how to act. You are not extinguishing the fire. You are learning to command it. There's a certain stillness in this command, the kind that unnerves those who expect your rage to explode. Silence becomes your weapon. Observation becomes your strategy. You begin to sense the patterns of those who provoke. You see their fear disguised as arrogance, their insecurity wrapped in cruelty. You no longer need to prove your worth through reaction. Your restraint unsettles them more than any retaliation could. Injustice will still hurt. Betrayal will still sting. But awareness changes your posture. Instead of reacting like prey, you begin to move like a strategist. Each breath, each pause becomes a decision. You start asking, what outcome do I actually want? If you seek revenge only to soothe a wound, it will never be enough. If you act to restore alignment, to ensure it never happens again, your fire becomes sacred. It serves your evolution, not your ego. That is the difference between vengeance and transformation. Transformation requires patience. It requires you to hold the fire long enough for it to become light. When you can sit in your own heat without needing to discharge it immediately, you gain insight others cannot see. You start to recognize patterns of power and weakness in yourself and others. You understand timing, leverage, and silence. Every moment of awareness adds oxygen to your wisdom instead of to your rage. And yet, do not mistake awareness for passivity. You are not called to simply forgive and forget, nor to pretend you are unaffected. The purpose of awareness is to prepare you for decisive action, but action that emerges from understanding, not from impulse. Imagine the blacksmith. He does not strike the metal when the fire first flares. He waits until the heat has reached the perfect temperature, until his hand is steady and his mind focused. Then he shapes the blade. Each swing purposeful, each pause intentional. That is how you forge strength from fury. Awareness is the first hammer strike. It reveals what is real and what is projection. It teaches you to discern whether you are fighting for justice or feeding your ego. Sometimes you realize the battle is smaller than it felt in the moment, that your energy is too valuable to waste. Other times, awareness sharpens your conviction, confirming that retaliation is not only justified but necessary. Either way, you choose from clarity, not compulsion. The moment you act with awareness, you shift the power dynamic. The one who hurt you no longer controls your emotional rhythm. You dictate the tempo now. But this awareness requires courage, because to see clearly, you must look directly at the raw edges of your pain, the humiliation, the rage, the disappointment. You must admit how deeply it affected you. That honesty is uncomfortable, but it is also purifying. It burns away illusion. There's a strange peace that arrives when you stop running from your own anger. You start to understand its texture. You see how it flares, then cools, then flares again. You learn its language, and once you know the language of your fire, no one can manipulate it against you. People who provoke you feed on your reaction. They expect explosion. They rely on chaos. When you respond with awareness instead, with quiet eyes and measured tone, they lose their leverage. Their control dissolves. You remain centered in your own authority. That is the art of the flame. You may still choose to strike later, but by then it will not be out of blind rage. It will be a deliberate move in a larger strategy, one that serves your growth and your justice. The paradox of revenge is that its power peaks when you no longer need it. When you have seen the full architecture of your own fury, you become untouchable. No manipulation, no insult, no betrayal can unseat you from your center, because you have already explored the depths of what those emotions can summon. You understand the fire, and so you are no longer afraid of it. That understanding does not make you soft. It makes you precise. You begin to sense when to engage and when to let the world burn itself out. You learn that silence can speak louder than rage. That withdrawal can cut deeper than confrontation. That sometimes walking away with your power intact is the most devastating retaliation of all. But all of this begins with the first act of awareness, pausing in the moment of ignition and seeing the flame for what it is. So when that fire rises again, do not resist it and do not rush to use it. Feel it, study it, learn its heat, ask what it wants you to know. Let it remind you that you are alive, that you still care, that your boundaries matter. Then decide what deserves your fire and what does not. Because the truth is this: not every betrayal is worth your combustion. Not every enemy deserves your energy. The more you understand your fire, the more selective you become in how you share it. You begin to use anger as a tool for focus, for clarity, for creation. And when you do act, when you finally release the flame, you will not do so as someone consumed by rage, but as someone illuminated by it. You will have transformed raw fury into disciplined fire, emotion into insight, reaction into command. That is the beginning of power that cannot be taken from you. Let this be your first understanding. Retaliation is not about striking back. It is about awakening, about learning to walk through your own fire without fear, about realizing that the same heat that can destroy can also refine you. In the end, awareness is your protection. It turns the flame inward, not to burn, but to forge. Breathe into that, feel it, and know you are no longer at the mercy of your anger. You are its master. Chapter 2. The Psychology of Payback. Understanding the impulse to retaliate. There is a certain sweetness in imagining justice. The mind replays the moment of betrayal and crafts a scene where balance is restored, where the one who wronged you finally feels what you felt. That fantasy can be intoxicating. It promises power, relief, and validation. But underneath that craving lies a complex truth. The desire for payback is rarely about the other person. It's about you. Retaliation begins as an emotional echo. The moment someone inflicts harm, a part of you seeks to reverse it. You want to reassert control, to prove that you cannot be diminished. The mind says, I will not be made small. I will make them understand. Yet what drives that thought is not always strength. It is often pain dressed as authority. To understand the psychology of payback, you must first see that revenge is a mirror. When someone wounds you, they leave an imprint, a sense of imbalance. The psyche seeks symmetry. It wants to feel that what was taken has been returned, that the scale of power is even again. But this is where the trap begins. Because balance achieved through retaliation is temporary. It soothes the surface, but it does not heal the root. The real wound is not the act itself, but what it represents. Rejection, betrayal, humiliation, loss of control. Each of these cuts into identity. Retaliation then becomes an attempt to repair the story of who you are. To declare, I am not weak. I am not disposable. I am not powerless. And yet, every act born purely of vengeance carries a shadow. For a moment it feels righteous, but soon the satisfaction fades, replaced by the emptiness it was meant to erase. Because revenge feeds the same wound it tries to close. It keeps you bound to the person who hurt you, tied by the energy of opposition. Think of it this way. If your every move revolves around punishing another, then they still occupy your mind, your emotions, your time. They have stolen something more than peace. They have stolen direction. You are no longer acting from your center, but from reaction. This is why awareness is power. To reclaim yourself, you must step back and observe what revenge is really doing inside you. Begin by noticing the voice that arises when you imagine payback. Is it calm or desperate? Does it whisper precision or does it scream for chaos? Behind that voice lies your motivation. Sometimes revenge is a survival response, a refusal to be victimized again. Other times it's an attempt to soothe an ego wound that feels unbearable. Only one of those paths leads to liberation. Pay attention to the fantasies your mind creates. When you picture them being exposed, humiliated, or punished, what emotion arises in you? Satisfaction, relief, or does it deepen your agitation? The answer reveals whether you are moving toward healing or staying trapped in the cycle. There is no shame in wanting revenge. It is a human impulse rooted in biology and survival. Across history, it kept tribes from being overrun, ensured justice within communities, and maintained balance in a chaotic world. But personal evolution demands more than survival. It demands sovereignty, and sovereignty begins when you stop letting your enemies dictate your emotional temperature. Ask yourself, who benefits from my rage? Who gains when I obsess over payback? Often, the one who wronged you moves on while you remain burning. The fire that was meant to protect you becomes your own cage. The mind convinces you that closure will come only when they suffer. But closure cannot be outsourced. It is an inner decision, a private act of reclaiming authority. The psychology of revenge thrives on a dangerous illusion that making another bleed will stop your own. It never does. What it gives is a temporary numbness, followed by a deeper ache, because the real injury is internal. You are not only mourning what happened, you are mourning the loss of innocence, the version of yourself that still believed justice was natural and fairness guaranteed. That is the true pain behind retaliation. The shock of realizing the world can be unfair, people can be cruel, and goodness does not always protect you. In that realization, revenge seems like the only language the universe might understand. But there is another language, one that speaks more powerfully and endures longer. The language of self-restoration. Before striking back, ask what you actually need to restore. Is it dignity? Then build something that proves your worth. Is it safety? Then strengthen your boundaries. Is it respect? Then elevate your presence until your very existence commands it. When your energy rises, their memory fades. That is real victory, the kind that leaves no ashes behind. This shift in mindset requires patience because the body still remembers the wound. Your nervous system stays alert, replaying moments of betrayal. You may feel restless, imagining confrontation, replaying conversations, planning words you might say. Instead of judging those thoughts, study them. Each replay reveals what your soul still needs closure on. Notice what part of the story you keep returning to. Is it the moment they lied? The instant you stayed silent? The second you lost control? Each fixation points to an unmet need. Sometimes you want revenge not against them but against your own silence. You wish you had fought back sooner. You wish you had protected yourself more fiercely. Understanding that brings compassion. The fire you feel is not only for justice, it's also for self-forgiveness. And here lies the turning point. When you realize revenge is not about them anymore, it's about repairing your relationship with yourself. You can reclaim that energy in powerful ways. Begin by facing the truth of what happened without distortion. Tell yourself the story without exaggeration, without minimizing, without emotional fog. Describe the event as if observing it from afar. When you do, the emotional charge begins to settle. Clarity replaces chaos. Then acknowledge your feelings, not the surface anger alone, but the layers beneath it. Grief, betrayal, shame, helplessness. Each deserves to be felt, not judged. Suppressed emotion fuels obsession, expressed emotion releases it. From that space of honesty, you can now decide what kind of justice serves your highest purpose. Revenge and justice are not the same. Revenge seeks to destroy, justice seeks to correct. One comes from pain, the other from power. When you are clear about your motive, you stop acting impulsively. You start thinking strategically. You learn to choose actions that restore balance without sacrificing your integrity. There is a discipline in this restraint, a quiet strength that grows as you resist the urge to react. People will misread it as weakness. Let them. Those who thrive on chaos cannot understand composure, but you will. You'll feel it as calm clarity in your body, a grounded certainty that you no longer need to chase acknowledgement from those who betrayed you. They no longer define you. This is the moment when the fire begins to change color. What once burned red with rage turns white-hot with purpose. The same energy that wanted destruction now fuels growth, ambition, and creative power. You realize you can redirect it into something enduring, a business, a body of work, a transformation so profound it silences every doubt ever spoken against you. That is the alchemy hidden within the psychology of payback. Because when you rise from betrayal with awareness, you no longer seek to match their energy, you transcend it. The mind that once plotted revenge now designs empires. The heart that once screamed for validation now emanates strength. You stop chasing justice and start embodying it. It's not easy. There will be nights when the fire still flickers. You'll feel the pull to strike, to send a message, to prove you can hurt too. In those moments, pause. Remind yourself that power earned through composure lasts longer than power claimed through chaos. You are not meant to be untouched by betrayal. You are meant to be refined by it. Every wound teaches discernment. Every disappointment sharpens intuition. Every injustice expands your capacity for depth and strength. Revenge is instinct. Mastery is choice. The psychology of payback becomes your teacher when you stop denying its presence. You do not need to pretend you are above anger. You only need to ensure anger serves you, not rules you. So when that old urge returns, smile at it. Recognize it as a remnant of an earlier version of yourself, a version that needed proof of power. Now, you no longer need proof. You are the evidence. The more you study the impulse to retaliate, the more clearly you see how power really works. True authority does not chase validation. It creates consequence. And the most profound consequence you can offer someone who tried to destroy you is your unshakable peace. When you hold that peace, steady, silent, and absolute, you send a message that echoes louder than any revenge could. You cannot be controlled. You cannot be defined by another's cruelty. You are no longer reacting. You are rewriting the entire story. That is how vengeance evolves into sovereignty. Let this understanding settle deep. Your desire for payback was never wrong. It was a signal, a fierce declaration that something precious within you demanded protection. You are now learning to protect it in a way that builds, not breaks. So hold the fire, but let it light your path, not scorch it. Transform the impulse into insight, the fantasy into focus, the wound into wisdom. And as you walk forward, remember, the ones who wronged you already took a piece of your past. Do not give them your future by living in reaction. You have something far more powerful than revenge now, clarity. And from clarity comes command. Your energy belongs to your evolution, not your enemies. Chapter 3. The Cost of Endless Cycles. When retribution becomes self-destruction, revenge begins as fire, sharp and consuming. At first it feels cleansing, like justice burning through decay. But if you're not careful, it becomes a furnace without an end, feeding on your own spirit. You tell yourself you're simply balancing the scales, but the truth is, the longer you feed the cycle, the more it feeds on you. Every act of retribution keeps the wound alive. Each mental replay of what was done to you keeps the original betrayal pulsing beneath your skin. It's like scratching a scab that never fully heals, convincing yourself you're cleaning the wound when you're only reopening it. That is the hidden cost, the quiet erosion that happens while you're looking outward, aiming to hurt what hurt you. You stop noticing how much of your energy, time, and vitality you've surrendered to someone who no longer deserves a single breath of your attention. You may not see it right away. It begins subtly. The anger sharpens your focus. The drive to set things right gives you purpose. You feel alive, alert, unbreakable. You tell yourself, I'm in control now, but what you're controlling is borrowed fuel. It burns fast, it burns hot, and when it's gone, it leaves you hollow. This is how the spiral begins. Each time you retaliate, the satisfaction fades faster. You start needing more victories, more validation, more signs that you've won. Yet no amount of winning erases the memory of being wronged. It's like trying to fill a void with echoes. The hunger grows even as you feed it. The mind doesn't see this as obsession. It calls it justice, closure, accountability. But your body knows. It feels the exhaustion behind the adrenaline. It feels the depletion after every confrontation. Your nervous system lives in survival mode, constantly preparing for the next move, the next blow, the next retaliation. You mistake tension for readiness. You confuse vigilance with strength. There comes a point when you must ask, how much of my life am I willing to sacrifice to keep this fire alive? Every moment spent plotting payback is a moment stolen from your peace, your creativity, your relationships. The more you revolve around your enemies, the more you become like them. The spiral doesn't just bind you to the past, it reshapes you in its image. You start seeing the world through the lens of suspicion. You expect betrayal even from those who love you. You push away softness, mistaking it for weakness. At first, vengeance feels like freedom, but slowly it becomes a cage you build with your own hands. When your identity becomes entwined with proving others wrong, you lose touch with who you were before the betrayal. You start living not to create but to counter, not to rise but to resist. The person you're trying to protect disappears beneath the armor. This is the silent tragedy of endless retaliation. It transforms pain into identity. You start believing you are your wound, that you need the fight to stay alive. You cling to it because letting go feels like erasing your own story. But letting go does not erase your story, it ends its captivity. You do not heal by denying what happened. You heal by no longer letting it dictate who you are becoming. Pause for a moment and imagine this. What if your enemy no longer exists in your thoughts? What if their name no longer stirs heat in your chest? Who would you be without that story? Many fear that emptiness because they've built an entire sense of power around opposition. But that emptiness is not a loss. It's space. Space where your real self can return. You may think the only alternative to revenge is forgiveness. It's not. Forgiveness is not required for liberation. What's required is release. The decision to stop feeding energy into a cycle that offers no return. There's a stark truth you must face. Cycles of revenge do not end because the other person surrenders. They end because you stop spinning. The cycle demands energy. Without your participation, it collapses. But stepping out of it feels unnatural at first. The fire inside you doesn't vanish overnight. You'll still feel flashes of anger, still imagine scenarios of reckoning. That's normal. The goal is not to suppress those feelings, it's to refuse their leadership. When the mind whispers they need to pay, respond, they already did. I will not pay alongside them. Every time you refuse to react, you reclaim another piece of your power. It's like untangling a knot that's been pulling at your chest for years. At first, the threads resist, but as you persist, they loosen. The air returns to your lungs. You start to breathe again. You may notice that your energy, once scattered across arguments and grudges, begins to concentrate inward. What once felt like anger now feels like heat in the belly, a force waiting for direction. This is transformation beginning. The cost of endless cycles is not only emotional, it's spiritual. Each act of revenge distorts your moral compass a little more. You justify things you once condemned. You speak words you later regret. You start to resemble the very darkness you wanted to fight. And when you look in the mirror, you see not your enemy's face, but your own, hardened, weary, unrecognizable. Awareness is the first rescue. It begins the moment you admit, this is no longer about justice. This is about obsession. Admitting that feels like defeat, but it is actually liberation, because obsession cannot survive the light of awareness. Once you see how deeply it's entangled in your sense of worth, you can start separating from it. Ask yourself, what do I truly want at the end of all this? If the answer is peace, then revenge cannot get you there. If the answer is strength, then you must build it through creation, not destruction. If the answer is closure, then closure begins with acceptance, the kind that says, I cannot change what happened, but I can choose what happens next. The irony of vengeance is that it often recreates the very pain it seeks to eliminate. You wanted to teach them a lesson, but in the process, you became the student of your own suffering. The fire that was meant to cleanse ends up burning through everything it touches. And yet, this realization is not the end of your power. It's the beginning of your mastery. Because once you understand the cost, you can decide what's worth paying for. Would you spend your joy to keep your anger alive? Would you trade your peace for proof of control? Would you surrender your future to win a battle in the past? When you frame it that way, clarity arrives. The cost becomes too high. And so, You begin to withdraw the energy that fuels the spiral. You stop rehearsing the conversations in your head. You stop explaining your pain to those who refuse to understand it. You stop chasing validation from the ones who caused the wound. Instead, you start investing that same intensity into yourself. You build boundaries. You learn skills. You nurture alliances that nourish your spirit. You use the fire not to scorch, but to forge. Revenge loses its grip when you finally have something greater to live for than proving someone wrong. That's when the balance shifts. The very people who once drained your power become irrelevant. Their names lose weight. Their stories lose meaning. You no longer need their apology or their suffering to confirm your worth. You rise not because you defeated them, but because you no longer need to. The energy that once kept you trapped in cycles of retaliation becomes your greatest asset, raw fuel for transformation. You begin creating with the same force that once destroyed. Every goal you pursue becomes an act of reclamation. Every victory a quiet declaration. I have chosen my own evolution over my old anger. In that choice, the spiral ends. And when it does, you'll notice something miraculous. The fire remains, but it no longer burns, it warms, it empowers. It lights your path forward. The cost of endless cycles was never just the time or energy you spent. It was your identity, your freedom, your capacity for joy. By ending the cycle, you reclaim all of it. So let this truth settle deep within you. You do not have to extinguish your fire to heal. You only have to stop throwing yourself into it. Revenge promises power, but awareness delivers it. And when you rise from the spiral, you rise unmarked by smoke, carrying only the light of what you've learned, the power to act without hatred, to lead without vengeance, to live without the shadow of old battles dictating your path. That is the freedom waiting on the other side of retribution. The kind of power that no one can provoke because it is built on the ashes of everything you once thought you needed to destroy. Chapter 4. Emotional Mastery in Conflict. Turning fire into strategic energy. Anger is an ancient force. It rises in the gut, tightens the breath, and fills the body with urgency. It is the pulse that says, something must be done. But without guidance, it can turn into chaos, an uncontrolled burn that scorches everything in its path. Emotional mastery begins when you stop trying to suppress anger and start learning to wield it. Like fire, it is not the enemy. It is the raw material of transformation. Most people misunderstand emotional control. They think it means calm detachment, a quiet exterior that hides all feeling. But true mastery is not about numbness. It's about conscious awareness, knowing what burns within you and choosing when and how to let that fire move. The goal is not to eliminate the flame, but to give it direction. When you face conflict, your nervous system prepares for battle. The heartbeat quickens, muscles tense. Your mind starts rehearsing every possible outcome. It's a primal mechanism designed for survival. But in modern life, the threats are rarely physical. They are psychological, emotional, and social. Someone questions your integrity, betrays your trust, challenges your authority. And yet your body reacts as if you're facing a predator in the dark. Mastery begins with awareness of that physiological truth. Before you can act strategically, you must understand what your body is doing in those moments. Anger floods you with adrenaline and cortisol. It sharpens focus but narrows perception. You see the threat clearly, but often only the threat. Everything else fades into the background. That's why decisions made in anger often lack dimension. They feel powerful, but they lack perspective. To master emotion, first pause long enough to witness it. That pause is sacred. It's where power gathers. Feel your breath. Notice its rhythm. Slow it deliberately. Count each inhale. Count each exhale. This simple act tells your body that the threat is being evaluated, not ignored, not denied, but measured. In that space between impulse and action, strategy is born. Once you've created distance from the initial surge, name the emotion. Not just anger. Go deeper. Is it humiliation, betrayal, injustice, helplessness? Each variation of anger carries a different message and demands a different response. The anger of betrayal might call for protection and clarity. The anger of injustice might demand confrontation and reform. The anger of helplessness might signal a need for boundaries or empowerment. When you can name it, you can work with it. After awareness comes transmutation, the art of turning emotional energy into purposeful motion. This is where anger becomes an ally. Think of fire again. It can destroy, but it can also forge. The key is containment. You need a crucible strong enough to hold the heat. In human terms, that crucible is discipline. Discipline in language, in posture, in timing. You don't lash out. You speak with precision. You don't rush. You wait for the moment that carries maximum impact. You turn the raw heat of emotion into concentrated power. That is what separates reaction from response. Reaction is reflexive. It seeks relief. Response is intentional. It seeks outcome. Emotional mastery lies in that distinction. You no longer act because you must. You act because you choose. This discipline does not come from repression but from self-respect. You refuse to let others dictate your rhythm. You refuse to let chaos rewrite your script. You become your own stabilizing force. When provoked, you don't fall into their timing. You slow the tempo. You set the pace. You let silence do some of the work. Nothing unnerves a manipulator more than calm, measured presence. But emotional mastery doesn't mean you never show emotion. Sometimes power is expressed through intensity, through a deliberate flash of controlled fury. When used consciously, emotion becomes a tool of influence. A moment of fire can break through apathy, shake denial, or establish boundaries. The difference lies in who owns the emotion, you or the moment. To reach that level, practice conscious release. Anger that isn't expressed constructively will find another way out. It may turn inward as guilt or resentment, or it may explode when least expected. You must give it motion but with intention. Speak it out in solitude. Write it down. Move your body, walk, run, breathe deeply until the current shifts. Then return to stillness and clarity. The act of expression is not weakness. It is maintenance. It keeps your system clean, your mind sharp, your spirit agile. Mastery also requires honesty about your triggers. What consistently provokes you? What patterns do you see in your conflicts? Often, what angers us most reveals what we fear losing: control, respect, love, freedom. When you understand the root of your reactions, you gain leverage over them. You begin to anticipate your own emotional storms. Instead of being swept away, you can navigate them. Remember, emotion and logic are not enemies. They are allies that serve different purposes. Emotion gives you the fuel. Logic gives you direction. When both are aligned, your actions carry weight and clarity. You become formidable not because you are cold, but because you are clear. In every conflict, there's a moment when emotion peaks. If you can remain grounded in that moment, neither retreating nor exploding, you hold the advantage. Others may lose balance, reveal too much, or act impulsively. You, on the other hand, become a mirror. Their chaos reflects back to them while you remain composed. In that stillness, power shifts quietly in your favor. Yet mastery is not about dominance. It's about sovereignty. It's the art of self-command, ruling your own emotional kingdom so that no one else can invade it. That's how you maintain integrity even in war. You may confront, you may defend, but you never lose yourself in the process. Sometimes, emotional mastery means choosing silence. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Silence can be more piercing than accusation, more unsettling than argument. It forces others to face their own noise. But silence must be chosen, not imposed. When it comes from strength, it communicates control. When it comes from avoidance, it signals defeat. Know the difference. Other times, mastery means speaking truth with precision. Your words cut clean, not cruel. You use tone as a tool, steady, deliberate, unshaken. The listener feels the weight not in volume but in certainty. This is how power communicates when it no longer seeks validation. Over time, emotional mastery becomes less about managing conflict and more about creating equilibrium. You stop being reactive altogether. You start sensing tension before it erupts. You redirect energy early with subtle adjustments, a look, a pause, a phrase. People sense your stability and unconsciously adjust to it. This is how emotional mastery extends influence beyond direct confrontation. You don't just react to the atmosphere, you shape it. To cultivate this, integrate daily rituals that ground you. Start the day with stillness before input. Breathe before you speak. Reflect before you decide. The small moments of discipline build a larger pattern of composure. And when the fire rises, as it inevitably will, you already have structure to hold it. In the end, emotional mastery is not about being untouchable. It's about being unshakable. You will still feel deeply, perhaps even more deeply than before. But the feelings no longer control your direction. They inform it. They sharpen it. You learn to ride the currents instead of fighting them. Conflict will always test your balance. Every confrontation is a mirror reflecting the strength or fragility of your inner world. But if you meet fire with awareness, you gain not just victory but evolution. Pause here in this truth. You are not the anger, you are the awareness holding it. You are not the storm. You are the sky it passes through. When you act from that place, even your fire becomes wisdom. That is the heart of emotional mastery, not denial of your humanity, but full command of it. You are both the flame and the hand that shapes its light. And with that awareness, every conflict becomes a chance to refine your power, not lose it. When the next wave of anger comes, remember this. The pause is your throne. Sit upon it. Breathe. Feel the heat. Then let it move through you, not to destroy, but to illuminate. That is how fire turns into strategy. That is how fury becomes focus. That is how you rise without burning. Chapter 5. Strategic response over reaction. Choosing actions that serve your purpose. When something or someone wrongs you, your first instinct is to react. It's primal, immediate, and often satisfying in the moment. The surge of adrenaline, the sharp clarity of indignation, it all feels like power. But what you feel in that instant is not power, it's pressure. Power is not in the reaction, it's in the choice that comes after. Reaction is impulsive. Response is intentional. Reaction is about control. Response is about direction. When you learn to shift from reaction to response, you move from being ruled by emotion to ruling through it. This is where strategic energy begins to take shape. Every act of revenge or justice carries a question. Does this action serve my purpose, or does it simply serve my pain? Pain seeks relief. Purpose seeks outcome. The difference may seem subtle in the moment, but it defines the trajectory of your life. When you're caught in the emotional heat of betrayal or disrespect, everything feels personal, and in truth, it often is. But when you stay in that frame, you narrow your vision. You stop seeing patterns, motives, and timing. You focus only on the wound. To act strategically, you must lift your awareness above that wound. See the entire field, not just the point of impact. This doesn't mean pretending you're unaffected. It means being conscious of how the event fits into the larger structure of your life and values. What will this reaction cost you? What will it teach others about your boundaries? What version of yourself will you reinforce through it? Every move either reinforces chaos or builds structure. You decide which story you strengthen. Strategic response begins with patience, the hardest virtue when your blood is hot. Patience is not hesitation, it's precision. It's the discipline to wait until you understand the landscape before you move. Most conflicts resolve themselves in time, but ego often insists on instant correction. That urgency is rarely about justice. It's about pride-seeking restoration. To cultivate patience, you must learn to breathe through discomfort. The mind tells you that silence is weakness, that stillness is surrender. But in truth, stillness gathers information. The more you observe, the more you see. You begin to notice who speaks too much, who avoids eye contact, who shifts alliances subtly. Emotional stillness reveals social motion, and once you can read the movement beneath the surface, you can anticipate rather than react. A strategic response has 3 stages: observation, evaluation, and execution. Observation means seeing without distortion. Gather facts, not interpretations. Emotion colors perception, so the first task is neutrality. Ask, what exactly happened? Who benefited? What changed as a result? Avoid storytelling, stick to what is. Evaluation means considering options in light of your long-term goals. Revenge often tempts you to act fast, but wisdom demands alignment. Ask yourself, what outcome am I truly seeking? Is it recognition, balance, correction, or release? Sometimes the most powerful response is withdrawal. Sometimes it's exposure. Sometimes it's creation, building something so undeniable that the slight no longer matters. Execution comes only after clarity. When you move, move completely. No half measures, no uncertainty. Strategy loses power when it's diluted by second guessing. Once you decide on your path, let the decision carry its own authority. Strategic response requires detachment but not indifference. You still care deeply. You simply refuse to let emotion drive your car. You let it fuel the engine, but your mind holds the wheel. This kind of control unnerves those who expected an outburst. They anticipated rage, argument, chaos. Instead, they meet quiet calculation. That silence makes people uneasy because it's the sound of someone thinking clearly. When you no longer react on command, others lose their leverage. You start to see that retaliation is not about getting even. It's about restoring balance within yourself. You can't always make external justice happen. Some people never apologize. Some situations never resolve neatly. The real victory is internal equilibrium. When you act strategically, you reclaim that balance on your own terms. Consider this. Reaction is public, response is private. Reaction exposes your inner workings. Response conceals them until the moment of revelation. This secrecy protects your power. The less predictable your moves, the more control you retain. The key is to act from conviction, not from emotion's echo. The difference between an amateur and a strategist is timing. The amateur wants closure now. The strategist waits until the impact is meaningful. They don't need everyone to see the move immediately. They only need it to matter when it lands. You learn to play the long game. You don't just counter the attack, you reshape the terrain. You change how people interact with you, how they perceive your strength. You teach through consequence, not confrontation. But this kind of strategic clarity requires humility. You must accept that you will not win every battle. Some must be abandoned to preserve your larger purpose. Ego demands constant proof. Wisdom knows that restraint is often the greatest display of dominance. There's power in not needing to respond at all. When your silence is grounded in self-assurance, it becomes a statement. It says, I see you. I understand what you attempted. And I am choosing not to engage because you are not worth the energy it would take to dismantle you. That kind of silence carries weight. It isn't passive, it's declarative. When you do choose to act, make the act count. Let it speak for you. A well-timed move renders explanation unnecessary. It could be a conversation, a boundary, a creation, or a disappearance. Whatever form it takes, let it carry finality. Don't reopen wounds to prove a point. When you close a chapter, close it completely. To develop strategic response, train your mind to expand beyond the moment. Imagine the ripple effects of your action. Where will this lead in 6 months, in a year? Will it free you, or will it bind you to the person or event you're trying to escape? Reaction ties you tighter to the conflict. Strategy unties the knot. One practical technique is visualization. Before acting, picture the scene as if you were watching it unfold on a screen. What would an observer notice about your tone, your timing, your outcome? This distance lets you refine the move before making it. It transforms emotional charge into creative control. Another technique is transference, redirecting the emotional energy into productive channels. Anger is raw fuel. Use it to finish a project, train harder, create art, or plan your next step. When your energy builds something rather than destroys something, you begin to see how powerful you really are. The fire no longer consumes, it illuminates. Strategic response also demands that you consider integrity. A move made without ethics may still bring satisfaction, but it will never bring peace. You can win the battle and still lose your soul. The goal is not to mirror your opponent's tactics, but to master your own. In moments of reflection, ask, if I follow this impulse, will I respect myself afterward? Will this action represent my strength or my wound? The answer will reveal whether it's reaction or strategy. Remember that revenge and justice may look similar on the surface, but they come from different depths. Revenge is driven by ego's need for equilibrium. Justice is guided by principle. The former burns fast, the latter builds foundation. When you align with principle, your response transcends the moment. It becomes part of your legacy. In the quiet aftermath of conflict, reflect on what the experience taught you. Did it expose a weakness? Reveal a boundary? Show you something about loyalty or timing? Every betrayal contains a lesson about leverage. When you extract the lesson, you reclaim your energy from the situation. Strategic response is not cold, it's clear. It's the wisdom of knowing that your greatest power lies not in how loudly you fight, but in how purposefully you move. You may appear calm, even distant, but beneath that stillness lies design. You are not retreating, you are recalibrating. Each time you choose response over reaction, you strengthen an inner structure that can withstand storms. You start to trust your timing, your intuition, your restraint. You realize that not every enemy deserves confrontation, and not every wound requires retaliation. Some energies are best outgrown, not avenged. When the urge to strike back rises, take a single breath before moving. Ask, will this serve my purpose or just soothe my pride? The answer will shape the quality of your power. Reaction seeks to win the moment. Strategy seeks to win the future. One burns out quickly, the other endures. And so, when conflict next finds you, remember this. You do not owe anyone your chaos. You owe yourself your clarity. Choose the move that builds your foundation, not the one that feeds your fury. That is how you turn fire into wisdom. That is how you rise beyond the spiral. Chapter 6. Recognizing hidden agendas. Avoiding traps in the dance of retaliation. Every act of retaliation takes place on a stage larger than it first appears. You see one person, one betrayal, one moment of disrespect, but beneath the surface, forces are already in motion. Some are emotional, some psychological, some strategic. Not every enemy comes forward with open hostility. Some move quietly, pulling threads in the dark, testing your reactions, mapping your weaknesses. To survive and prevail in this landscape, you must learn to see beneath the surface. Recognizing hidden agendas is not about paranoia. It's about perception. It's about learning to read energy, tone, timing, and silence as fluently as words. It's about noticing what is not being said, what changes subtly after each exchange, what patterns emerge when the same people cross paths. The moment you begin to see what others conceal, you gain a rare kind of power, the power of foresight. Hidden agendas thrive in emotional environments. When you are angry or defensive, your focus narrows. You want resolution, justice, or release. That tunnel vision makes it easy for manipulators to guide your attention while hiding their true aim. That's why self-control, discussed earlier, isn't just about discipline. It's a shield against deception. The calmer you are, the more you can see. Every manipulator depends on predictability. They need to know what will trigger you, what words or gestures will make you act impulsively. The first step in disarming them is to stop being predictable. When you no longer react as expected, their power begins to crumble. In the dance of retaliation, timing reveals truth. When someone provokes you, ask yourself, why now? Why this topic, this tone, this timing? Often, the immediate conflict is a diversion, a cover for something deeper. Perhaps someone wants to distract you from progress, bait you into emotional chaos, or make you look unstable in front of others. The surface offense may not be the real attack. Watch how people behave when you are silent. Stillness forces agendas into the open. Those who seek control will grow restless when they can't provoke a reaction. They will push harder, reveal more, or shift tactics. Those acting in good faith, however, will respect the pause. They will give space. That difference is your first clue. Hidden agendas often hide behind kindness. Flattery, sympathy, or shared outrage can be weapons of influence. The question isn't whether someone seems supportive, it's whether their support serves their interest more than yours. Manipulators often mirror your pain to gain trust, then redirect your energy toward their objective. You think you've found an ally, but you've actually been recruited into another's strategy. To protect yourself, cultivate observation without attachment. Listen deeply, but hold judgment until patterns form. People reveal themselves over time, not in their words, but in their consistency. A single act of betrayal can be impulsive. A pattern of subtle undermining is deliberate. Watch for the small ruptures, information withheld, narratives twisted, favors asked too soon. These are not random events, they are tests. Remember, power games are rarely about the stated issue. They're about control, validation, or dominance. If someone tries to control how you feel about them, how others perceive you, or how much of your truth you can express, you are likely dealing with a hidden agenda. The more strategic you become, the more subtle your opposition will grow. They may not challenge you directly. They may plant doubt in others, distort your intentions, or offer poisoned alliances. When this happens, stay centered in truth. Defend yourself, but do not explain excessively. Over-explaining feeds manipulation. It tells the other side what works. Speak only what is necessary and let silence carry the rest. One of the most dangerous traps in any conflict is emotional baiting. This happens when someone crafts situations that provoke your instincts. They want you reactive because reaction is readable, and readable people are controllable. The antidote is curiosity. Instead of responding to provocation, step back and ask, what outcome might they be hoping for if I react this way? What narrative would my reaction support? The very act of questioning breaks the spell. Strategic awareness means reading the board, not just the player. Look at the network of connections, who benefits, who gains proximity, who suddenly shifts loyalty. Power dynamics leave trails. Hidden agendas often reveal themselves through alliances and timing. When someone acts unpredictably, don't rush to label them friend or foe. Some people play both sides, not out of malice but out of fear. They seek safety in every camp. Understanding this helps you remain detached. You stop expecting loyalty from those built for survival, and you stop wasting energy proving yourself to those whose minds are already split. You will also encounter people who cloak selfishness in righteousness. They claim moral superiority while manipulating outcomes to serve their ego. This type is especially dangerous because they justify cruelty as virtue. The only defense is clarity, seeing that their morality is selective, their justice performative. Never argue values with those who use ethics as weapons. You cannot reason someone out of a deception they depend on for identity. Learning to recognize hidden motives requires self-honesty as well. Ask yourself, what parts of me are easiest to manipulate? Is it my pride, my empathy, my need to be understood? Your vulnerabilities are the entry points. The less you deny them, the harder they are to exploit. Self-awareness is your best armor. In this process, develop emotional neutrality as a skill. Neutrality doesn't mean apathy. It means you can watch without losing balance. When you sense an agenda, don't rush to expose it. Watch it unfold. People reveal themselves fully when they believe you are blind. Let them underestimate you. It gives you space to understand their strategy completely before you move. Sometimes, recognizing hidden agendas means accepting uncomfortable truths about people you once trusted. Betrayal from a stranger wounds the mind. Betrayal from someone close wounds the soul. But even then, the truth is liberation. You can't heal from what you refuse to see. Clarity is not cruelty, it's survival. When clarity comes, don't waste energy proving the truth to others. Those who need proof often won't accept it until they are ready. Instead, act quietly. Withdraw your energy, redirect your focus, realign your alliances. The shift in your behavior will tell the story more powerfully than confrontation ever could. Understand that not every hidden agenda is malicious. Sometimes people hide intentions because they fear rejection, judgment, or exposure. Even so, you must discern impact, not intent. A well-meaning lie can still cause harm. A fearful person can still betray. Compassion should never replace caution. To navigate deception without losing yourself, you must develop inner equilibrium. This is the state where you neither trust blindly nor doubt reflexively. You listen, you observe, you feel the currents, but you do not get swept away. From this place you can respond intelligently, not emotionally. Your intuition will be your greatest ally. The body often knows before the mind admits it. That subtle discomfort you feel when someone's words don't match their tone, when their eyes don't align with their smile, that's your intuition signaling misalignment. Trust it. Intuition is the whisper of accumulated truth, the wisdom of pattern recognition honed through experience. To refine it, practice stillness. When you quiet mental noise, intuition speaks clearly. It doesn't shout or explain, it simply signals. You don't need to rationalize it, you just need to respect it. Many downfalls come from ignoring that early warning. As you sharpen this awareness, you may feel more isolated at times. Seeing through deception can make the world seem colder, but that's an illusion. Clarity doesn't remove warmth, it refines it. It teaches you where to give your warmth so it nourishes, not drains. In the dance of retaliation, the wise do not chase enemies, they outlast them. They see the web and choose their path carefully, stepping lightly over traps laid in emotion. They understand that true victory is not outsmarting everyone. It's staying aligned with integrity while reading the game as it is. The art of recognizing hidden agendas is not about suspicion. It's about freedom. Freedom from manipulation. Freedom from naivety. Freedom from the cycles that repeat when you refuse to see clearly. When you master this art, your perception becomes armor. You no longer stumble into traps disguised as opportunities or apologies. You see through the veil, act with precision, and move with quiet power. In the end, awareness is not a weapon, it's illumination. It allows you to walk through darkness without becoming part of it. It teaches you that clarity is the highest form of defense, and restraint the most elegant expression of strength. So when the next wave of deceit approaches, pause, watch, listen. Let others play their game. You already see the pattern. You already know the ending. And in your knowing, you rise untangled, unshaken, unbound. Chapter 7. Transforming pain into power, using injustice as fuel for growth. Pain is a teacher, though its lessons are often disguised as suffering. When someone betrays you, undermines you, or disregards your value, it ignites a fire in the soul. That fire can consume you, leaving ashes of bitterness and regret, or it can fuel a transformation that elevates every part of your life. The choice between destruction and empowerment begins with awareness, understanding that the energy you feel in response to injustice is not a curse. It is raw material for growth. Most people recoil from pain. They suppress it, numb it, or distract themselves from it. And in doing so, they relinquish power. The energy of pain is relentless. It will find an outlet. When unchanneled, it becomes resentment, passive aggression, or self-sabotage. But when channeled consciously, it becomes momentum, clarity, and motivation. The first step in this transformation is to stop resisting what has happened and acknowledge it fully. Pain carries messages. It signals boundaries crossed, values violated, and truth ignored. It is not merely an emotional reaction. It is intelligence encoded in the body and mind. The body tightens. The chest constricts. Thoughts replay the event endlessly. These are signals to pay attention, not signs that you are broken. By listening, you extract the knowledge that guides your next move. The alchemy begins with acceptance. Accept that the injustice occurred. Accept the discomfort. Accept the emotions surging through you: anger, sadness, humiliation, confusion. Acceptance is not surrender. It is recognition of reality. When you resist the truth, your energy fights itself. When you acknowledge it, your energy becomes usable, like water channeled through a turbine, producing power rather than chaos. Once acceptance is in place, reflection follows. Examine the event carefully, as if under a magnifying glass. What motivated the other person? What circumstances enabled their behavior? How did you respond, and how did that response serve or hinder you? This reflective lens allows you to extract lessons without being blinded by emotion. Knowledge gained in this way is armor, soft, adaptive, and resilient. Transformation demands ownership, not of the wrongdoing, but of your response. You cannot control every action others take, but you can control your reaction, your interpretation, and your next move. Ownership shifts you from victimhood to agency. It is the pivot point where energy converts from destructive to constructive. One of the most potent methods of transmutation is channeling the energy of pain into creation. When wronged, direct your focus outward, toward your ambitions, your projects, your body, your mind. Physical movement, exercise, labor, or disciplined practice burns the excess heat and transforms it into endurance. Creative acts, writing, art, music, problem-solving, transmute emotional intensity into legacy. Every step toward constructive output reclaims power you might otherwise surrender to bitterness. Pain also sharpens vision. Betrayal and adversity force clarity in relationships, priorities, and personal standards. They illuminate patterns previously ignored, flaws in judgment, and the elements of your life that require fortification. Each challenge is a spotlight revealing where your attention and energy must go. People who ignore pain repeat cycles of victimhood. Those who learn from it gain insight that accelerates growth. Strategically, adversity reveals opportunity. A betrayal may close one door but open another. The discomfort you feel is a signal to reallocate your resources, strengthen your network, or develop skills neglected under comfort. When approached with intention, each injustice is a pivot point, a chance to recalibrate, redirect, and reclaim momentum. The transformation of pain into power also requires emotional regulation. Without it, intensity becomes destructive. Channeling energy effectively demands that you acknowledge anger without acting impulsively, feel hurt without internalizing resentment, and hold disappointment without letting it erode confidence. Tools like journaling, meditation, deliberate breathwork, and focused movement allow the energy of pain to circulate through you rather than stagnate. Circulation is the first step in conversion. Another key aspect is resilience. Growth from pain is rarely linear. You may falter, relapse into doubt, or revisit the wound in unexpected moments. This is not failure. It is part of the refining process. Each confrontation with residual hurt is a rehearsal in mastery, a chance to practice maintaining composure, insight, and focus. Over time, these repetitions condition a durable, responsive spirit. Financial and personal empowerment often follow this alchemy. When emotional energy is freed from fixation on vengeance, it becomes raw fuel for achievement. People who have been wronged often develop a heightened sensitivity to opportunity, a sharper sense of timing, and an instinct for value that those untouched by adversity rarely possess. Pain, when harnessed, enhances discernment and fuels ambition with a precision born from experience. Transformation also depends on perspective. Injustice is universal, but response is individual. While others may succumb to anger, self-pity, or avoidance, you have the option to convert the experience into a teaching for yourself, and when appropriate, for others. This is how personal setbacks become strategic advantage. You internalize lessons faster, anticipate challenges sooner, and navigate human complexity with enhanced acuity. Empowerment from pain is cumulative. Each experience adds depth to resilience, height to self-confidence, and clarity to judgment. It shifts the internal narrative from why me to what now, a question that triggers action and growth rather than stagnation. The mind begins to operate as a laboratory for transformation, testing responses, measuring outcomes, and refining strategies. However, the process is not purely rational. Emotional intelligence is central. The energy of pain is volatile. If misdirected, it harms relationships, career opportunities, and your sense of self. Emotional mastery ensures that the power gained from adversity is expressed with integrity. Anger becomes leverage, not liability. Sorrow becomes reflection, not paralysis. Betrayal becomes insight, not obsession. Forgiveness in this context is not a moral requirement, it is a strategic tool. By releasing fixation on the past, you free energy for creation. Forgiveness does not excuse wrongs, it clears space for forward motion. The person who wronged you may remain unchanged, but your capacity to act decisively, build strength, and cultivate opportunity expands exponentially. Over time, transformed pain becomes identity. You move through the world differently, more measured, more focused, more aware of subtleties that others miss. You develop instinctive discernment, a capacity for nuanced judgment, and a reservoir of energy that sustains long-term growth. What once threatened to break you now defines your power. This is the ultimate paradox. What hurts you can also lift you. Betrayal can sharpen vision. Loss can cultivate resilience. Humiliation can deepen confidence. Each experience carries both risk and reward. The difference lies in how you choose to engage with it. The conscious decision to transform pain into power is the defining act of self-mastery. Finally, empowerment from adversity requires patience. The effects of transformation are gradual. Immediate satisfaction is rare. The alchemy works over time. But every deliberate choice to act with awareness, every disciplined application of energy, every moment of reflection contributes to an irreversible elevation of capacity. Pause now and reflect. The injustice you endured was not a sentence, it was a lesson. The fire it ignited is not meant to consume, it is meant to forge. When you treat pain as a resource, not a curse, you take command of your narrative. You reclaim energy that once felt stolen. You convert loss into momentum, setback into strategy, and suffering into sovereign strength. Let the lesson settle. Every wound can be a weapon, every insult a catalyst, every betrayal a guide. The energy that might have trapped you in cycles of bitterness is now a current that propels you forward. Injustice is no longer a weight, it is fuel. And with that fuel you rise, not bitter, not broken, but blazing, purposeful, unstoppable. Chapter 8. Aligning justice with integrity. Pursuing retaliation without losing yourself. Vengeance without integrity becomes tyranny. When the desire for justice burns unchecked, it stops being about righting a wrong and starts being about domination. In that moment, you cross an invisible line, from being the wronged to becoming the oppressor. True mastery lies not in crushing your enemy, but in defeating the part of you that hungers to destroy without purpose. Retaliation tests the soul. It asks, what will you do with your fire when it's no longer about survival but restoration? Many mistake restraint for weakness, but restraint is what keeps your power from turning into poison. Integrity acts as the container that holds your fire. Without it, you scorch everything in your path, including yourself. The hidden price of unprincipled power. When you seek revenge purely to inflict pain, you pay a spiritual tax that compounds over time. The satisfaction is instant but fleeting. You may win the argument, ruin reputations, or make someone pay, but a quiet discomfort follows. The realization that you've mirrored the very cruelty you despised. Power gained through corruption corrodes from the inside out. There's a certain intoxication in vengeance, a high that comes from reclaiming control. But like any drug, the crash is inevitable. When the fire fades, you're left with the ashes of your own moral erosion. What began as empowerment turns into emptiness. The soul doesn't thrive on domination, it thrives on coherence. Integrity restores coherence. It's the bridge between passion and principle, between fire and purpose. It reminds you that justice is not about balance of pain, it's about restoration of order. You cannot rebuild peace from chaos unless your foundation is clean. The mirror test. Every act of retaliation reflects something deeper about you. It's never just about the other person, it's about who you become in response to them. Before taking any action, pause and ask yourself, is this action aligned with who I want to be? Will it bring peace or will it feed more unrest? Am I acting from truth or from the wound? If your answer points to the wound, wait. Healing first ensures that your decisions are rooted in clarity, not contamination. Many destroy their credibility, relationships, or inner stability because they acted from unprocessed rage disguised as justice. The universe has a way of mirroring intentions. What you put out, whether clean or corrupted, returns multiplied. When revenge is pure reaction, it reflects pain. When it's guided by principle, it reflects evolution. Integrity allows you to wield the sword of justice without bleeding from its edge. The discipline of dignified retaliation. Acting with integrity doesn't mean you let betrayal slide. It means you respond strategically rather than impulsively. Dignified retaliation is a form of high art. It requires emotional maturity, timing, and precision. It's not about shouting louder, it's about striking cleaner. There's power in silence, in letting others expose themselves through their own chaos. Sometimes the most elegant revenge is to outlast, outgrow, and outshine your enemies. By not engaging in their frequency, you deny them what they crave most, your reaction. Other times, integrity demands direct confrontation. But even then, the goal is not destruction, it's correction. To speak truth clearly without venom is an act of moral strength. Integrity ensures that your power serves purpose, not ego. Remember, you can be fierce and ethical, unyielding and fair. There's no virtue in allowing others to violate your boundaries, but there's also no victory in becoming cruel to prove your strength. The balance lies in enforcement without malice, in clarity without cruelty. When revenge and justice diverge, justice and revenge are not the same river. Justice flows from order and truth. Revenge flows from chaos and pain. Sometimes they overlap, but often they diverge. When you act from revenge, you aim to make others hurt as you did. When you act from justice, you aim to restore equilibrium. Integrity ensures that your actions serve the latter. You learn to say, I will not let this harm define me. I will not become my oppressor. Each choice made from that space reinforces sovereignty. Patience plays a critical role. Acting too soon allows emotion to cloud logic. Acting too late lets resentment rot into despair. Integrity teaches you the rhythm of righteous timing. The most devastatingly effective justice often unfolds quietly, long after your emotions have cooled. The sovereignty of principle. When you act with integrity, you don't need to justify yourself. Your actions carry their own legitimacy. People can sense when your power is clean, when your motives are aligned with truth rather than ego. That purity makes you unpredictable, untouchable. No one can manipulate a person who acts from principle instead of impulse. Each time you choose integrity over indulgence, you reclaim fragments of your sovereignty. You show the universe, and yourself, that your energy cannot be hijacked by resentment. Integrity becomes your shield and compass, ensuring that your vengeance serves your evolution, not your downfall. The redefinition of victory. There's a deeper kind of triumph that doesn't announce itself with noise. Sometimes victory is walking away with your peace intact, while the other side drowns in their own chaos. Sometimes it's transmuting your pain into purpose so profound that the memory of injustice becomes the foundation of your strength. The need for revenge fades when you realize that thriving is the most intelligent retaliation of all. Your existence becomes the evidence of your resilience. Your growth becomes your message. You're not erasing the wound, you're transforming it into wisdom, living the principle. To align justice with integrity is to live as your own moral authority. It's to know that you can burn with passion without burning down what you've built. It's the art of wielding truth like a scalpel, not a sword, precise, clean, effective. You no longer act to prove a point, you act to uphold a standard. You no longer fight for validation, you fight for alignment. You no longer seek destruction, you seek restoration. When you reach this stage, revenge becomes unnecessary. You operate from such clarity and control that others sense your power but cannot provoke your dissent. Your silence becomes their mirror. Your composure becomes your retaliation, And that's the paradox of integrity. It makes you both softer and stronger. Softer in empathy because you understand pain's origin. Stronger in will because you refuse to let pain define your conduct. The closing flame. The fire of justice doesn't have to scorch. When aligned with integrity, it illuminates. You can use it to burn illusions, reveal truth, and light your path forward. The world needs that fire, but it needs it in hands that won't misuse it. To live with integrity is to choose power without corruption, vengeance without cruelty, justice without hatred. It is to stand at the crossroads of rage and reason, and choose wisdom. That is the essence of true retaliation. The transformation of fury into clarity, of pain into poise, of reaction into sacred restoration. Chapter 9. Systems that channel energy, creating structures to contain and direct intensity. Energy without structure is chaos. Intensity untethered becomes overwhelming, both for yourself and for those around you. The same fire that can fuel transformation can just as easily consume focus, relationships, and opportunities if left without containment. To harness the power of your emotions, your ambitions, and even your desire for justice, you must build systems, deliberate frameworks that direct energy toward meaningful outcomes. A system is not merely a routine or a schedule. It is a vessel that holds your intensity, shaping it so that it serves your purpose rather than your impulses. It allows you to act decisively without being swept away by emotion. When chaos threatens, structure becomes your anchor. It transforms raw power into sustainable momentum. The first step in creating such a system is awareness. Begin by mapping how your energy currently flows. Observe the moments when passion rises, when anger spikes, when focus falters. Notice the triggers, people, situations, or internal thoughts that disrupt your equilibrium. Understanding the natural rhythm of your intensity is essential to building containment around it. Once you understand your patterns, design spaces that channel energy constructively. For emotional intensity, this might include designated times for reflection, movement, or creative expression. For mental intensity, it could involve structured problem-solving sessions, goal mapping, or journaling. The key is intentionality. Each structure must have a purpose, a reason for existing beyond simply keeping busy. Boundaries are central to this framework. They act as the walls of your system, preventing energy from spilling into unproductive or destructive avenues. Boundaries are not rigid prisons. They are flexible, resilient guides that allow energy to flow in controlled directions. For example, when anger arises, a boundary might be a rule. I will not act impulsively before a 24-hour pause. This pause transforms immediate reaction into considered response, turning raw fire into strategic fuel. Accountability strengthens your system. Even the most well-designed structure can fail if it is not reinforced. Hold yourself responsible for maintaining the channels you've created. Check in regularly. Track your actions and their outcomes. Systems thrive when monitored and adjusted. What works today may not work tomorrow. Adaptation is part of mastery. Energy is also social. People can either drain or amplify your intensity. Recognize the allies and detractors within your environment. Integrate them thoughtfully into your system. Surround yourself with those who align with your purpose and minimize exposure to those who provoke unnecessary chaos. Your system is both internal and external. It encompasses your mind, body, and surroundings. Tools enhance the framework. Physical reminders, written plans, or symbolic rituals can help contain and direct energy. A journal, for instance, captures surging thoughts and emotions, preventing them from dictating impulsive action. A scheduled reflection period allows clarity to rise from the turbulence. Small, consistent practices compound over time, turning discipline into instinct. One of the most powerful aspects of a system is predictability. When intensity is channeled reliably, it becomes easier to make decisions under pressure. You know where your energy goes, and it knows where to go in return. This reciprocity between intention and execution is the foundation of sustained power. Systems also protect against burnout. Intensity is finite. Without management, it can dissipate in scattered efforts or emotional exhaustion. By containing energy, you preserve it for the actions that matter most. The fire you wield can last longer, burn brighter, and leave a meaningful impact rather than flickering aimlessly and dying out. Flexibility is crucial. While structure provides direction, rigidity invites stagnation. A system should accommodate unforeseen challenges and opportunities, allowing energy to pivot without losing containment. The strongest frameworks are those that balance discipline with adaptability, rules that guide but do not strangle. Visualization is a key technique for channeling energy within systems. Imagine your goals and the steps required to achieve them. Picture your intensity as a current flowing through channels you've built. See it hitting obstacles and being redirected efficiently, rather than spilling uncontrollably. Visualization aligns subconscious intention with conscious strategy, reinforcing the framework you've established. Energy is cumulative. The more you practice channeling intensity through systems, the more naturally it flows. Habits form, instincts sharpen, and actions gain precision. You begin to recognize early warning signs of distraction, burnout, or misalignment and correct course proactively. Over time, containment becomes effortless, allowing the raw force of your drive to manifest consistently in tangible outcomes. Systems also safeguard relationships. Intensity can be magnetic, but it can also overwhelm others if not directed. By regulating how and when you express emotional and strategic energy, you maintain influence without alienating allies or creating unnecessary conflict. Your fire becomes attractive, inspiring, and transformative rather than intimidating or destructive. Strategic distribution of energy is another crucial element. Not every situation or person requires equal attention. Some conflicts deserve decisive engagement, while others demand restraint or withdrawal. Your system acts as a filter, prioritizing where your energy is invested. Efficiency in action amplifies effectiveness, ensuring that passion is never wasted. Review and refinement are ongoing. Systems are living structures. They must evolve alongside your goals, growth, and the shifting dynamics of your environment. Regular reflection ensures that energy flows continue to serve purpose rather than habit or inertia. Adaptation prevents stagnation and keeps your fire aligned with long-term vision. The ultimate aim of channeling energy through systems is mastery over yourself and your environment. When your intensity is contained and directed, it becomes a tool rather than a weapon, a force that builds rather than burns. You gain control over your internal landscape, and through that control, influence in the external world. In practice, this means designing routines that harness energy at peak moments, structuring tasks to maximize focus, and creating rituals that convert emotional surges into productive action. It also means setting boundaries in relationships, controlling exposure to triggers, and intentionally allocating mental and physical resources. Every element reinforces the others, creating a coherent ecosystem of energy. Systems do not suppress passion, they enhance it. Containment does not diminish force, it amplifies it. A well-channeled current can cut through obstacles that raw, uncontrolled energy could never overcome. The disciplined flow allows for strategic strikes, deliberate creation, and sustainable growth. When intensity is channeled through systems, you no longer feel at the mercy of your impulses. You transform reactive energy into proactive influence. Challenges become manageable, opportunities become visible, and your capacity for sustained action expands. You are no longer just responding to the world, you are shaping it. This framework also strengthens resilience. When setbacks occur, the system holds you steady, preventing chaos from spreading. When success arrives, the system channels it efficiently, allowing energy to compound rather than dissipate. It turns every experience, whether positive or negative, into material for growth and empowerment. The final lesson of systemization is clarity. Energy that flows in structured channels reveals where attention, focus, and action are most needed. Distraction diminishes, priorities sharpen, and the chaos of unchecked emotion transforms into the precision of directed force. You no longer burn indiscriminately, you burn with purpose. Pause and reflect. Your intensity is a resource, not a hazard. By building structures to contain and direct it, you reclaim control over your power. You transform fire into a tool, emotion into strategy, and chaos into clarity. Systems are not limitations, they are liberation. They allow your energy to work for you, not against you, and in doing so they create the foundation for sustained influence, growth, and triumph. Chapter 10. The Alchemy of Retaliation. Turning anger into strategic advantage. Anger is a primal force, raw and untamed, a pulse that rises sharply when injustice strikes. It can be explosive, overwhelming, and utterly consuming, or it can be a tool of profound transformation. The difference between chaos and mastery lies not in the intensity of your emotions, but in the skill with which you harness them. Alchemy, in its deepest sense, is about transformation, turning base impulses into refined outcomes, converting raw emotion into strategic advantage. When it comes to retaliation, this is the ultimate skill, the ability to take the fire of fury and bend it to your purpose without letting it consume you. The first step in this process is recognition. You must identify the precise nature of your anger. Is it righteous, a reaction to clear injustice? Or is it ego-driven, a reflection of wounded pride, fear, or insecurity? The subtle difference is critical. Righteous anger has direction. It seeks balance, restoration, and correction. Ego-driven anger is reactive and erratic, a storm that leaves destruction in its wake. Recognition allows you to see not only the cause of your feelings, but their potential trajectory, whether they will serve or sabotage you. Awareness alone, however, is not enough. Anger is energy. It demands release, focus, and redirection. Suppression dulls clarity, while unrestrained expression erodes control. To transform it, you must first contain it. Containment is not denial. It is the conscious act of holding intensity in check long enough to analyze, plan, and act strategically. One of the most effective methods is to establish an emotional boundary. In moments of heightened fury, give yourself time and space to process. Step away, breathe deliberately, journal your thoughts, or channel the energy into physical movement. The goal is not to extinguish the flame, but to direct it with precision. Once contained, anger becomes data. It informs you where limits were violated, where injustice occurred, and where energy should be allocated. Observe the patterns that provoked it. Look for repetition in behavior, timing, and context. Every emotional surge carries intelligence about the world around you. By extracting this intelligence, you convert raw fury into actionable insight. It is the first transformation, from untamed reaction into informed awareness. The second stage is synthesis, integrating the knowledge of the situation with your own capabilities, values, and goals. Retaliation is not a blind strike. It is a calculated response that serves a larger purpose. What do you truly aim to achieve? Restoration of balance, protection of self, deterrence of future harm, or establishment of authority? Clarifying your objective aligns your strategy with your intention, turning emotional energy into a directed force. Strategic advantage depends on timing. Impulse rarely produces mastery. Delayed, deliberate action allows clarity to emerge. Often, the most effective response is not immediate confrontation, but a patient, methodical buildup. Observing your adversary's patterns, assessing resources, and identifying leverage points transforms anger from a heat-driven eruption into a controlled instrument of influence. Timing is the crucible in which raw energy is refined into efficacy. Channeling intensity also requires prioritization. Not every slight, insult, or betrayal demands retaliation. Distinguish between offenses that threaten your long-term interests and those that are transient irritations. Acting on every provocation dilutes focus and exhausts energy. The alchemist selects targets strategically, ensuring that each action contributes to broader objectives. Energy-focused becomes power, power dispersed becomes futility. Physical and mental discipline are essential components of the alchemy. Anger produces a surge of adrenaline, a burst of energy that, if directed, can enhance physical capability, mental acuity, and strategic insight. Exercise, movement, and disciplined routines allow the body to release excess tension while preserving the heightened alertness that anger brings. Mental discipline, structured reflection, scenario planning, and visualization transforms impulsive emotion into calculated foresight. Together, they create a vessel for intensity that is both potent and sustainable. Emotional mastery is the keystone. Anger is seductive. It whispers that immediate action is necessary, that revenge validates your power. Without control, you risk becoming a puppet to your own intensity. To master it, cultivate awareness of bodily sensations, triggers, and cognitive patterns. Track the narrative your mind constructs in response to provocation. Question assumptions, examine motives, and test conclusions. Each layer peeled back allows clarity to guide action rather than emotion dictating consequence. The next layer of transformation is tactical design. Having contained and understood your anger, identified patterns, clarified objectives, and disciplined mind and body, you are ready to act. But action is not random. It is deliberate, precise, and adaptive. Consider multiple pathways, anticipate countermoves, and assess potential outcomes. True alchemy requires a balance between assertiveness and patience. Move decisively but with foresight. Strike where leverage is strongest, not where outrage is loudest. Communication plays a pivotal role in the alchemy of retaliation. Words, gestures, and presence carry energy as much as actions. The way you convey strength, confidence, and control can accomplish more than overt confrontation. Silence, timing, and selective revelation of information are tools in the strategist's arsenal. Often, the threat of controlled power achieves outcomes more effectively than reactive aggression. Resource management is another critical factor. Strategic advantage requires knowing what is available to you: time, information, relationships, influence, and deploying these resources with precision. Energy, like all resources, is finite. The alchemist ensures that every ounce of effort contributes to the intended outcome. Unfocused energy is squandered fire. Focused energy is the spark that ignites transformation. Reflection and feedback are essential. Each act of retaliation provides insight into your own capabilities and the dynamics around you. By reviewing outcomes dispassionately, you refine strategies, strengthen boundaries, and expand awareness. The alchemy is iterative. Each cycle of anger, containment, strategy, and action produces higher levels of mastery. Integration of emotional intelligence elevates the process. Understanding human behavior, reading motives, and anticipating reactions enhances your ability to convert intensity into influence. Anger alone is blunt. Insight sharpens it into a tool that can pierce the heart of complexity without collateral damage. Emotional intelligence transforms raw power into effective leadership, ensuring that retaliation serves purpose, not ego. Ethical consideration distinguishes mastery from chaos. The alchemist recognizes that power is most potent when aligned with principle. Retaliation guided by ethics reinforces sovereignty and cultivates respect. Acts that compromise integrity may yield temporary advantage but undermine long-term authority and self-respect. The highest form of strategic advantage occurs when action is effective, precise, and aligned with values. Visualization and mental rehearsal enhance preparedness. Imagine scenarios unfolding, the moves of others, and your own responses. Picture your anger as a controlled current, flowing toward intended outcomes rather than scattering. Rehearsal strengthens neural pathways, increases confidence, and reduces the likelihood of impulsive deviation. The mind becomes a laboratory where raw emotion is transmuted into skill. Physical presence complements mental strategy. How you carry yourself, the deliberate control of posture, tone, and expression, reinforces the impression of composure and authority. This presence can deter aggression, influence perception, and amplify the effect of calculated actions. Anger contained is compelling. Anger uncontrolled is chaotic. Collaboration and alliances are tools in strategic transformation. Identify individuals whose interests align with your goals, who can amplify your efforts, or who possess insights you lack. Coordination enhances the effectiveness of your moves and spreads the impact of energy without overextending yourself. Systems of support convert individual intensity into collective power. Timing, again, is paramount. The alchemist understands the rhythm of escalation and restraint. Acting too soon risks miscalculation. Acting too late forfeits opportunity. Precision in timing ensures that energy is expressed at maximum effect while maintaining control. Every decision, every move is a calculated release of pent-up intensity, transformed into strategic advantage. Long-term vision is the culmination of this alchemy. Immediate satisfaction rarely equals true power. The alchemist sacrifices short-term gratification for enduring influence. Each act of controlled retaliation contributes to the architecture of authority, reputation, and personal development. The energy of anger becomes the scaffolding for lasting achievement. Reflection closes the cycle. After action, pause to review, integrate, and adjust. What worked? What misfired? How can intensity be further refined for future application? This reflective practice turns experience into wisdom and wisdom into a sustainable force. The alchemy of retaliation is ultimately self-mastery. It transforms a reactive, destructive energy into proactive, constructive power. It allows you to act with precision, clarity, and confidence, turning what might have consumed you into a catalyst for achievement. The process is rigorous, requiring awareness, containment, strategy, ethical alignment, and discipline, but the reward is profound. In this transformation, anger ceases to be a liability. It becomes an engine for focus, clarity, and progress. It sharpens perception, clarifies intention, and strengthens resolve. The energy that once threatened to overwhelm now propels you forward, enabling action that is decisive, calculated, and effective. The ultimate lesson is this: fury, when mastered, becomes foresight, pain becomes momentum, betrayal becomes insight, and retaliation becomes art. You no longer react to the world, you influence it. You no longer stumble under emotion, you ride it like a current, directing it toward outcomes that serve your purpose, expand your influence, and reinforce your sovereignty. Alchemical retaliation is not about cruelty or dominance. It is about transformation. It is the conscious, deliberate conversion of raw, volatile energy into something enduring, strategic, and potent. It is the difference between being consumed and being empowered, between chaos and mastery, between reaction and strategy. Pause and reflect. The fire within you is not an enemy, it is an instrument. The energy of anger is not a burden, it is a resource. When guided by awareness, refined through discipline, and directed with purpose, it becomes the alchemy of your strength. You rise not through unbridled fury, but through mastery, foresight, and deliberate power. This is the art of turning anger into advantage, chaos into clarity, and retaliation into strategy. It is a skill that separates the impulsive from the sovereign, the reactive from the resilient. Through alchemy, the fire that once threatened to consume you now illuminates your path, propelling you toward mastery, freedom, and lasting impact. Chapter 11. Shadows Integrated. Balancing intensity, justice, and wisdom. The human mind carries light and darkness in equal measure. Intensity, passion, and drive are often paired with impulses that, if unexamined, can lead to destruction. Shadows are not weaknesses. They are truths we refuse to face, instincts we suppress, emotions we fear, and desires we deny. They reside in the corners of our psyche, in the silences between our thoughts, in the feelings we ignore because they make us uncomfortable. Integration is the art of acknowledging these shadows without letting them dominate, of learning to walk alongside them rather than fight them endlessly. In the realm of justice, power, and personal mastery, integrating your shadows is not optional. It is essential. At first, shadows appear threatening. They are the aspects of yourself that you deny, the impulses that society, upbringing, or past experiences have labeled unacceptable. Anger, envy, fear, desire for control, and the instinct to retaliate all dwell in this hidden realm. When suppressed, they fester, leaking into your actions in subtle ways, guiding decisions without conscious approval. The shadow is not evil. It is energy that seeks expression. Ignored, it manifests in resentment, impulsivity, self-sabotage, and conflicted relationships. Acknowledgement is the first step toward integration. You must shine a light on what you have avoided. Observe your impulses without judgment. Notice moments when you feel rage, jealousy, or obsession bubbling to the surface. Do not condemn them, understand them. Each shadow contains valuable information about your needs, your boundaries, and your priorities. Anger signals a limit crossed, fear signals vulnerability, and envy signals unfulfilled desire. By naming and understanding these impulses, you reclaim the energy trapped in avoidance. Integration requires reflection. Ask, what does this shadow tell me about myself? Why does it exist? What purpose did it once serve, and what does it need now? Often, shadows are remnants of survival strategies developed in earlier circumstances. A fear of betrayal may have protected you in the past, but now it could hinder trust and connection. Recognizing this allows you to repurpose shadow energy, transforming what once constrained you into a resource for insight and action. The next step is acceptance. Integration does not mean acting on every impulse. It means acknowledging its existence and consciously choosing whether, how, and when to express it. Anger, for example, can be a powerful motivator when channeled strategically, but destructive when unleashed impulsively. Desire for control can fuel discipline and achievement if balanced with wisdom, but it can destroy relationships if left unchecked. Acceptance frees you from the illusion that denying shadows makes you strong. True strength comes from conscious engagement with them. Wisdom is the guiding principle in shadow integration. When intensity, desire, and ambition are informed by insight, they become instruments of precision rather than chaos. You learn to ask, what is the most effective way to channel this energy? What aligns with my values, my long-term goals, and my sense of integrity? Shadows provide raw material, but wisdom shapes it into form. The combination of fire and clarity is what produces sustainable power. Integration also involves ownership. Shadows often emerge when we disown parts of ourselves, projecting them onto others or blaming the external world for what is happening internally. By owning your shadows, you reclaim responsibility for your reactions, choices, and outcomes. You stop giving your power away and begin acting from a place of self-sovereignty. Owning shadows does not excuse harmful behavior. It grants the ability to transform tendencies into tools. Another essential aspect of integration is emotional regulation. Shadows are intense. They carry energy that can overwhelm the mind and body. The integrated individual learns to ride the currents of emotion without being swept away. Techniques like deliberate breathing, mindful observation, movement, or creative expression allow the shadow to be expressed constructively rather than destructively. Emotional regulation transforms volatility into controlled momentum. Balance is central. Shadows are only part of the equation. Light, reason, compassion, strategic insight completes the picture. Integration is not about eradicating the dark but harmonizing it with the whole. Each action, each decision, is informed by both awareness of your shadow and alignment with principle. You no longer oscillate between extremes of indulgence and suppression. You act with nuanced understanding of your own complexity. In practical terms, this means that every desire for retaliation, recognition, or influence is filtered through conscious choice. You allow your instincts to inform strategy, your passion to fuel action, and your wisdom to guide direction. You do not eliminate intensity, you refine it. You do not suppress anger, you convert it into clarity. You do not ignore fear, you let it highlight areas requiring caution or preparation. In this way, shadows become allies rather than enemies. Integration also enhances perception. When shadows are ignored, we are blind to subtle dynamics in ourselves and others. We react, misinterpret, or overcompensate. When integrated, shadow awareness sharpens intuition, social understanding, and strategic insight. You see motives, anticipate moves, and assess consequences with a depth that is impossible when parts of yourself are hidden. The world becomes more transparent, opportunities more visible, and threats more manageable. Shadow integration demands discipline and honesty. It requires daily engagement with your internal landscape, reflection on your actions, and examination of recurring patterns. It requires courage, because the truths within your shadow can be uncomfortable and disorienting. Yet the rewards are profound. Energy once wasted on repression now fuels deliberate achievement, clarity replaces confusion, and self-mastery replaces reactive chaos. The social dimension of integration cannot be ignored. Shadows often dictate relational dynamics. Without awareness, jealousy, control, or fear can sabotage partnerships. With integration, these tendencies are acknowledged, balanced, and expressed constructively. You maintain healthy boundaries, communicate with precision, and influence without domination. You become magnetic not through force but through coherent, controlled presence. Integration also fosters resilience. Life will challenge you repeatedly. Betrayal, injustice, and setbacks are inevitable. Shadows, if unintegrated, amplify suffering in these moments. When integrated, they provide a reservoir of insight, energy, and adaptability. Anger becomes strategy, fear becomes caution, desire becomes motivation. Challenges are no longer purely external. They are invitations to apply the lessons contained within your own depths. Over time, the process of integration creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Awareness leads to containment. Containment leads to clarity. Clarity informs action. Action produces feedback. Feedback deepens insight. Insight enhances awareness. Energy once fragmented by fear, rage, or denial is now coherent and directed. You move through the world with measured intensity, combining the sharpness of instinct with the steadiness of judgment. Ethical calibration is the final layer. Shadows contain potential for both creation and destruction. Integration is not a license for indulgence. It is a framework for responsible empowerment. You act decisively, but with consideration of impact and principle. Your power is real, sustainable, and respected because it is informed by self-knowledge and moral clarity. The culmination of shadow integration is sovereignty. You are no longer subject to the unconscious impulses that once drove you. You are not controlled by anger, envy, or fear. You have absorbed the lessons of the dark and aligned them with the wisdom of the light. You act with force when necessary, restraint when required, and insight at all times. Your actions are precise, purposeful, and enduring. Integration also brings peace. Shadows that were once frightening become familiar, understandable, and manageable. You no longer fight yourself endlessly. You no longer oscillate between extremes of reaction and suppression. Intensity becomes an instrument, not a liability. Passion becomes guidance, not chaos. Anger becomes a compass, not a chain. The balance of justice and wisdom allows you to pursue objectives without losing your essence. In essence, shadow integration is the reconciliation of power with principle, fire with clarity, instinct with strategy. It is the alchemy of turning what could destroy into what builds, transforming raw energy into sustainable influence. It allows for decisive action without destructiveness, for passionate pursuit without blind obsession, for justice without cruelty. As a result, every act becomes intentional. Every response, whether in personal, professional, or strategic context, is informed by full awareness of your internal landscape. You understand motives, anticipate challenges, and deploy energy efficiently. You are both fierce and controlled, aware and instinctive, just and strategic. The journey of shadow integration is continuous. New challenges will reveal dormant tendencies. Old patterns may resurface under stress. But with established awareness, discipline, and reflection, these moments become opportunities to deepen mastery rather than crises of control. Integration is not a final destination. It is a living, dynamic practice that evolves with experience. The ultimate reward is clarity and freedom. Energy that once splintered across confusion or repression is now coherent and directed. Emotions are tools rather than obstacles. The self is unified rather than divided. Power is exercised with purpose rather than chaos. You are sovereign over your mind, your body, your responses, and your trajectory. Pause and reflect. Integrating shadows does not dim your intensity, it illuminates it. It does not weaken your sense of justice, it strengthens it. It does not constrain your passion, it channels it. By embracing the entirety of yourself, both light and shadow, you act with precision, wisdom, and enduring power. You are no longer fragmented, reactive, or limited. You are whole, purposeful, and unstoppable. The path of integration transforms raw potential into realized strength. It allows you to face the world with unwavering clarity, to respond to injustice with measured decisiveness, and to navigate challenges with both courage and insight. In the balance of shadows and light, you find mastery, not over others, but over yourself. You emerge as a force tempered by awareness, guided by principle, and empowered by the full spectrum of your being. Chapter 12. Sovereign Justice, Living with Mastery, Power, and Clarity. True justice is more than the act of retaliation. It is the embodiment of discernment, control, and moral clarity. It arises not from impulsive fury or the need to prove oneself, but from an understanding of cause, consequence, and long-term impact. Sovereign justice is the state in which you wield power consciously, respond strategically, and uphold your principles, even when provoked or challenged. It is a mastery that allows you to navigate the complex interplay of personal ambition, emotional intensity, and the inevitability of opposition without compromising your integrity or vision. The foundation of sovereign justice is self-mastery. You cannot act justly if you are ruled by your impulses, if your actions are dictated by uncontrolled anger, fear, or desire. Mastery begins with awareness, understanding your own patterns, triggers, strengths, and vulnerabilities. It requires meticulous attention to how emotions rise within you, how judgments form, and how decisions are influenced by internal and external pressures. Only by knowing yourself fully can you act with the balance, precision, and authority that justice demands. A sovereign individual recognizes that power and clarity are intertwined. Power without clarity becomes tyranny, coercion, or self-destruction. Clarity without power becomes impotence, indecision, or exploitation by others. The integration of the two creates an equilibrium, the ability to act decisively with awareness, to enforce boundaries without cruelty, and to pursue objectives without losing sight of values. Sovereign justice emerges in this space between action and insight, between intention and impact. At the heart of this approach is strategic vision. Immediate reactions often tempt us, especially when wronged, betrayed, or disrespected. Yet true justice is rarely in the quick strike or emotional outburst. It lies in understanding the wider context, anticipating consequences, and selecting actions that produce meaningful outcomes. Sovereign action is deliberate. It accounts for ripple effects, leverages resources effectively, and positions influence for sustained effect rather than fleeting satisfaction. Sovereign justice also requires a deep comprehension of human behavior. People act from motives, insecurities, and conditioned patterns. Recognizing these dynamics allows you to anticipate reactions, avoid unnecessary conflict, and assert authority with subtlety. Power is most effectively exercised when you move with insight rather than force, when you anticipate and influence rather than simply confront. By understanding the landscape of motivations around you, you become both proactive and adaptive, wielding influence in ways that create balance, respect, and long-term advantage. Boundaries form the operational framework of sovereign justice. They are clear, firm, and non-negotiable, yet not rigidly punitive. A boundary is not a weapon but a statement of principle, a declaration of your limits, values, and expectations. Maintaining boundaries demands consistency. Inconsistency invites manipulation, erodes authority, and diminishes personal integrity. Sovereign justice does not fluctuate with emotion. It stands as a stable, predictable force that others recognize, respect, and navigate accordingly. The emotional component is equally essential. Sovereign justice requires harnessing intensity without being consumed by it. Anger, resentment, and indignation are natural responses to injustice, but acting purely from these emotions leads to chaos or regret. Emotional regulation transforms reactive energy into deliberate action. Techniques such as mindful reflection, controlled expression, and strategic planning allow raw intensity to be transformed into effective, purposeful force. Emotions become tools, not masters, guiding insight rather than dictating impulse. Discipline is the ally of sovereignty. Mastery over self, strategy, and action requires consistent practice. This includes deliberate cultivation of patience, resilience, and foresight. Discipline ensures that decisions are aligned with principle, that responses are measured, and that power is exercised efficiently. It is the invisible scaffolding that supports clarity, authority, and ethical consistency, allowing you to navigate even the most complex situations with confidence and precision. Equally important is the concept of proportionality. True justice does not demand escalation or vengeance beyond what is necessary to restore balance or protect integrity. It is measured, intentional, and aligned with objectives. Overreaction is a sign of unmastered emotion. Underreaction risks loss of authority and boundaries. Sovereign justice exists in the calibrated space where response is commensurate with action, intensity is harnessed, and outcomes are optimized. Reflection and feedback are vital components of sustained sovereignty. Every engagement, conflict, or challenge is an opportunity to evaluate effectiveness, learn lessons, and refine strategy. Reflection transforms experience into wisdom, allowing mistakes to inform future decisions rather than repeating patterns. Feedback, both internal and external, ensures that justice remains grounded in reality rather than self-justification or ego. Over time, this practice cultivates a deep, intuitive understanding of both self and the environment, reinforcing mastery and discernment. Sovereign justice also requires courage, the courage to act decisively when necessary, to confront wrongdoing, and to maintain integrity under pressure. It demands the fortitude to stand alone if required, resisting manipulation, coercion, or popular sentiment when it conflicts with principle. Courage allows you to apply your insight without hesitation, to navigate risk without fear, and to pursue long-term outcomes without succumbing to short-term impulses. Integrity forms the ethical backbone. Sovereign justice is not arbitrary or self-serving. It is principled. Decisions and actions are rooted in a coherent set of values, and these values inform every choice, boundary, and strategy. Integrity ensures that power is respected rather than feared, that influence is sustainable rather than destructive, and that authority is earned rather than imposed. Sovereignty without integrity is tyranny. Integrity without sovereignty is impotence. Together, they create the balance of ethical mastery. Resource management is another critical dimension. Sovereign justice demands understanding and optimizing the tools, allies, and opportunities at your disposal. Energy, time, relationships, information, and influence are all finite. Effective sovereignty ensures they are directed toward strategic objectives rather than dissipated in reactionary or emotional responses. Prioritization and allocation allow intensity to be leveraged for maximum effect, creating outcomes that extend beyond the immediate moment. Communication is central to sustaining authority and clarity. Every word, gesture, and action conveys energy. Strategic expression ensures that your intent is understood, your boundaries are respected, and your authority is reinforced. Silence can be equally potent. The ability to communicate decisively, selectively, and intentionally magnifies impact, conveying strength and control without unnecessary confrontation. Sovereign individuals understand the power of both speech and silence as instruments of influence. Sovereign justice also requires adaptability. No situation is static, and no human behavior is predictable with absolute certainty. Mastery demands flexibility in approach without compromising principle. It requires the ability to adjust tactics, recalibrate boundaries, and respond to emerging realities while maintaining alignment with long-term vision. Adaptability ensures that your power remains effective and sustainable, even amid uncertainty, opposition, or change. Patience is a silent force in the exercise of sovereign justice. Immediate satisfaction is rarely aligned with optimal outcomes. Long-term planning, measured observation, and delayed action often yield greater influence, clarity, and balance. Patience allows for the accumulation of insight, the alignment of resources, and the execution of strategies that maximize impact while minimizing unnecessary risk. In the interplay of timing, action, and consequence, patience is the unseen hand that guides mastery. Self-reflection and internal dialogue are indispensable. Continuous evaluation of motives, intentions, and outcomes ensures that actions remain consistent with principle rather than being swayed by pride, revenge, or ego. By examining patterns, biases, and blind spots, sovereign individuals cultivate clarity, prevent misjudgment, and refine strategies over time. The practice of reflection converts experience into enduring insight, making every challenge a stepping stone toward higher mastery. Another element of sovereign justice is foresight. Anticipating the potential consequences of actions, both immediate and long-term, is crucial. Each choice is weighed not only for its immediate efficacy, but also for its impact on relationships, reputation, and future opportunities. Foresight prevents impulsive missteps and ensures that justice, even when assertive or confrontational, produces sustainable outcomes aligned with overarching goals. Sovereign justice also emphasizes empowerment rather than domination. The goal is not to crush opponents or assert superiority for its own sake. It is to establish equilibrium, enforce boundaries, and protect integrity. Empowerment focuses on effective use of energy, influence, and strategy, ensuring that each action consolidates authority, enhances capacity, and reinforces principle. Dominance without purpose is fleeting. Sovereignty with clarity endures. Resilience remains a defining trait. Even the most careful planning and disciplined execution encounter setbacks, resistance, or misjudgment. Sovereign individuals absorb these challenges without losing composure or direction. Resilience allows recovery, adaptation, and recalibration, transforming potential defeats into lessons, obstacles into insight, and opposition into opportunities. It ensures continuity of influence, strength, and ethical authority under pressure. Integration of personal growth is the final layer. Sovereign justice is inseparable from the continuous development of self-awareness, skill, and discernment. Mastery is dynamic. It evolves as understanding deepens, experience accumulates, and insight is refined. Continuous learning, adaptation, and self-examination ensure that sovereignty is not static but living, responsive, and sustainable. Each encounter with challenge becomes a tool for refinement, strengthening both authority and integrity. The culmination of sovereign justice is freedom. The individual who attains this level of mastery operates with agency over thoughts, emotions, and actions. Decisions are deliberate, energy is directed, and influence is wielded with precision. Chaos, provocation, and opposition no longer dictate behavior. Principles, strategy, and long-term vision guide every move. Freedom emerges not from the absence of challenge but from the capacity to respond with clarity, authority, and intentionality. In practical terms, sovereign justice manifests in life as decisive action guided by principle, clear boundaries maintained without aggression, and influence applied with foresight. Challenges are met strategically, setbacks are absorbed constructively, and victories are secured without compromising values. Relationships, resources, and opportunities are managed with clarity, ensuring that the individual's power is sustainable, respected, and effective. The ultimate lesson is that mastery, power, and clarity are inseparable. Power exercised without clarity invites destruction. Clarity without power yields impotence. Mastery without ethical grounding risks arrogance. Sovereign justice reconciles these forces, producing a state in which authority, influence, and action are aligned with principle, strategy, and self-mastery. Pause and reflect. Living with sovereign justice does not mean never feeling anger or facing opposition. It means experiencing intensity fully, understanding its implications, and converting it into informed, deliberate action. It means standing firm in principle while remaining adaptable, assertive without aggression, and resolute without rigidity. It is the art of acting decisively and ethically, of navigating conflict without compromise, and of transforming energy into enduring influence. Through this practice, life becomes a landscape of empowered choices rather than reactive chaos. Each decision is intentional, each action aligned with values, and each response measured for maximum effect. Energy, emotion, and influence are harmonized into a coherent force. Sovereignty is not simply about controlling circumstances or people. It is about commanding oneself, mastering emotion, and exercising judgment with precision. Sovereign justice is not a destination. It is a way of being. It is a continuous commitment to awareness, ethical alignment, strategic action, and self-mastery. It allows you to navigate complexity without losing clarity, to engage with intensity without losing composure, and to enforce boundaries without losing integrity. It transforms challenges into opportunities, opposition into insight, and conflict into deliberate influence. The energy of justice, once chaotic, now flows as a controlled current. Anger, when it arises, is acknowledged, refined, and directed. Strength, once raw, is disciplined and focused. Decisions, once reactive, are deliberate and aligned. In this state, you are sovereign, fully present, fully empowered, fully responsible. You act with authority, discernment, and unwavering principle. You do not react, you command. You do not fight, you shape. You do not flounder, you rise. Pause once more and internalize this. Sovereign justice is the culmination of all your efforts to master self, channel energy, and act with principle. It is the embodiment of mastery, power, and clarity. It allows the fire of past challenges, betrayals, and injustices to fuel growth rather than destruction. Through it, you transform intensity into influence, pain into insight, and energy into enduring achievement. You are not merely surviving the world, you